SLT එක්ක ස්පීඩ් අප් වෙන්න. සුපර් ඩීල්ස් අත්විඳින්න. SLT ස්පීඩ් අප් සුපර් ඩීල්ස් සැප්තැම්බර් 30 දක්වා පමණයි.
Tonight, in case he didn't get the message, Sajid conveys his presidential aspirations to the Prime Minister in writing. President's bombshell. Former Director General of the TRCSL says the President is misled over the Lotus Tower controversy claim. Price of development. Margins shrink as Sri Lanka becomes an upper middle income country.
Are now even more subject to the discipline of rating agencies, and that reduces our room to maneuver.
We cannot have an economic management system suited for a low income country.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9 this Tuesday, the 17th of September 2019.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9.
මුහුණ සති කීපයකට කලින් ෆෑර් ඇන්ඩ් ලව්ලි මෙන් ගෑවට පස්සේ මාක්ස් අඩු වෙලා ෆෑනස් වැඩි වෙලා.
මාක්ස් අඩු කරලා ඔයාගේ ෆෑනස් ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක වැඩි කරගන්න. ෆෑර් ඇන්ඩ් ලව්ලි මෙන් ඇන්ටි මාක්ස් ක්‍රීම්.
Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhamike Kanaka. Let's start with your local stories. President Maithripala Sirisena's statement regarding an alleged scam of 2 billion rupees by a Chinese firm during the construction of the Colombo Lotus Tower is drawing attention from all quarters. The allegation came out of the blue, and the head of state's remarks are criticised exactly for that, the timing. Former Director General of the Telecommunications Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka, Anusha Palpita, today strongly refuted the head of state's remarks, claiming that the president's narration of the events are wrong and that he could well have been misled. The allegation, being a thinly veiled dig at the government of China, was also a hypothesis floated about today.
At the glittering opening ceremony of the Colombo Lotus Tower yesterday, President Maithripala Sirisena made a controversial statement regarding an alleged scam worth 2 billion rupees by a Chinese firm during the construction of the iconic tower. Former Director General of the Telecommunications Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka, Anusha Palpita, however, refuted President's claims via a post on Facebook. He said that the cabinet approval was granted in October 29 of 2012 for involvement of China National Electronics Import and Export Corporation as well as Elite. Palpita insists that TRC Sri Lanka holds all information regarding relevant discussions between Sri Lankan delegation and chairman of the Elite. Palpita's Facebook post also had a photo which he claims to have been taken in Beijing during discussions between former chairman of the tender board Gotabaya Jayaratne and chairman of the Chinese firm Elite.
I
believe the president has been misinformed by officials. Although we were to pay an advance of 20%, it was reduced to 15% after discussions. The amount was nearly 2 billion rupees. We paid all that amount to the Chinese firm CEIEC, which had an account with the Exim Bank of China. We have not paid a single cent to the firm called Elite at any point in time. The TRC finally managed to settle all that money through interim payments. However, as a result of the delay in completion of the construction process, we could not hold the agreement with the Exim Bank. Therefore, we couldn't settle a sum amounting to $2.137 million. Professor Samita Manamadu of the Moratuwa University, who oversaw the project, said to me that the entire advance has now been settled. I call on officials of the TRC to come forward and reveal the truth.
Meanwhile, attorney Premanath C. Dolavatta lodged a complaint at the police headquarters today requesting a comprehensive investigation to the statement made by the head of state. Parliamentarians of the SLPP also expressed these views regarding the president's controversial statement.
This project, which commenced in 2012, was supposed to be completed by 2015. After a delay of 4.5 years, it was at the opening ceremony of this tower that President talks about a scam of 2 billion rupees. We condemn this statement because former President and the Cabinet of Ministers take full responsibility over the matter, and the money had only been paid to one bank account since the project's commencement. If such a scam has actually happened, it is the President's responsibility to appoint an independent presidential commission to look into it and produce a comprehensive report within within the next 2 weeks. Our view is that the president attempted to send a thinly veiled insult to the Chinese government, which helped Sri Lanka to be highlighted in the South Asian region.
යටින් මේ හරහා යවන්න උත්සාහ දරපු බව තමයි අපේ අදහස.
තුමා චෝදනාව එල්ල කරා මේ සමාගමද
The president claimed that this firm is non-existent and that not even the Sri Lankan ambassador to China, Karunasena Kodituaku, could find it. We doubt whether the president has been misled by a certain group because anybody can find Aerospace Long March International Trade Company Limited if they do a Google search. The president also made a very serious accusation regarding the Gingnilwala diversion project. He accused that 5 billion rupees worth of an advance has been paid to a Chinese company 24 hours before the presidential election and that this money is now missing. However, an internal ministerial investigation conducted later found that this company, which was involved in the project, incurred expenditure more than 5 billion rupees. But since the government failed to pay the remaining sum, the company left the project. We also suspect whether the president wanted to insult former President Mahinda Rajapaksa through the statement he made yesterday.
මේ පිළිබඳව මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමාට අපහාසයක් කරන්නද කියන සැකයත් අපිට මතුවෙනවා.
Now, Deputy Leader of the United National Party, Minister Sajith Premadasa, has written to Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe conveying his aspirations of becoming the party's chosen man to contest the looming presidential poll. Today, he called on the PM to select the presidential candidate to represent the party soon after discussions with the UNP's Parliamentary Group and Working Committee. Meanwhile, Speaker Karu Jayasuriya too seems to be getting involved in the race as he issued a statement on the matter today.
Deputy Leader of the United National Party, Minister Sajith Premadasa, held a special media briefing at the residence of Minister Mangala Samravira today regarding his aspirations in becoming the party's chosen man to fight for the office of President. He was joined by Ministers Kabi Hashim, Ranjit Madhuma Bandara, Malik Samravikrama and Chandrani Bandara.
Yesterday, I informed the Prime Minister in writing that I've decided to contest in the upcoming presidential election. With a date for the election needs to be declared, my view is that a decision regarding our candidate must be made soon following discussions with the UNP Parliamentary Group and the Working Committee.
All I'm saying is let there be a frank and transparent discussion within the Working Committee and the Parliamentary Group. All of us will be able to ascertain the plethora of opinions among the members, and if there is consensus, so be it. But if there are a diversity of opinions, you can adopt the greatest democratic principle and model, that is to have a democratic vote, secret ballot.
There is no strong opposition from them. We can always have cordial discussions regarding the matter because I am a firm Democrat. If the public want me to go home, I will do so. I'm discussing with everybody in the political sphere. I'm having talks with certain members of the SLPP as well.
With Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe also having expressed his desire to run for presidency, the UNP has been experiencing some turbulent times as the party splintered into two factions. To compound matters, Speaker Karu Jayasuriya also entered the ring today. Issuing a special statement, the Speaker says that he has received multiple requests from various factions to contest in the upcoming presidential election. Jayasuriya, however, emphasizes that he will do so only with political forces whose main objective is to abolish the executive presidency while advocating for improved optimal democratic reform presented by the 17th Amendment and ensured through the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. Jayasuriya went on to say that if he decides to contest in the election, it would be a commitment made for a limited period of time with the intention of laying the foundation for an economically and morally secure country with an advanced democracy and never as an intervention with the expectation of the presidency. He, however, said that if he is to contest representing the parties of the United National Front, it will happen with the support of all parties involved and as per the party's constitution. The question, will it be the Prime Minister or Sajid, seems to be the most favoured question of many journalists in recent times, and today was no different.
There was agreement from all of us to Prime Minister's proposal on forming a coalition for the presidential election. He also asked us about a presidential candidate. He had never been an autocratic leader over his political career. He once gave the opportunity to MP Sarath Fonseca and once to President Maithripala Sirisena as per agreement of the majority. He said that he will go with the majority consensus this time as well. UNP's leadership had requested him to prove whether he has the support of other political parties of the UNF. We hope he will be nominated as the candidate.
Meanwhile, issuing a special statement, General Secretary of the UMP, Minister Viraj Karewasam, alleged that certain groups have launched an organised campaign to portray a false crisis within the United National Front, led by the UMP with regard to selecting its presidential candidate. He added that a final agreement has already been reached regarding the formation of the broader political alliance. Karewasam insisted that as per the agreement, the presidential candidate will be nominated from the UMP, and on that basis, the UMP will be choosing a suitable candidate. He stated that accordingly, a candidate will be chosen according to the UMP constitution while safeguarding democratic norms and traditions.
With political parties gearing up for a presidential election, the poll itself is yet to be declared by the Election Commission. To that end, a meeting was worked off between the Commission and political party representatives today. Speaking to media after the discussion, possible dates for the election was divulged to media, with the representative of the Jatika Hela Urume quoted the Election Commission as saying that the presidential poll will be worked off on the 15th of November.
A meeting was held between members of the Election Commission and party secretaries and representatives this morning. It ran for 3 hours at the Election Commission, focusing on the presidential election. Following the meeting, party representatives expressed their views to media.
We were able to collectively agree on common consensus. No, the Election Commission made a request from all candidates to provide an affidavit saying there aren't any elements which would disqualify them. Let's see, they support us all the time. In fact, they backed us even during this meeting. A decision is yet to be made. We will decide whether to strike an alliance or to go it alone after the presidential election is declared. Our parliamentary group was adamant that the symbol must be changed. We will produce a candidate if it is needed. There are discussions underway and we will only announce the decision at the conclusion of the talks. If it's unsuccessful, an alternative will be sought. We are very happy if the poll can be contested under the symbol the beetle leaf, but since that's not favoured, our party members think arriving at a middle ground is reasonable. Dates were given, with the 15th of November being the latest possible date, with the 7th of December being the furthest possible date. The Election Commission said that they will provide a date in between the two. It was said that there is a high possibility of the presidential election being worked off on the 15th of November. In the meantime, President Maithripala Sirisena intends to stop the brain drain in the country, criticising eminent professionals who seek employment overseas for misusing democracy, which enables them to leave the country without restrictions. When I met with Indian ministers and the Indian Health Minister, especially during my tenure as Minister of Health, I queried from them with regards to the issues we face in our health sector with trade union action and what their experiences are. I found out that they are leagues ahead of us. In India, if the number of engineers required is 100,000 and they have 110,000 engineers, only these extra 10,000 engineers are permitted to leave the country. It is the same with doctors. In most countries, this is set down in their constitutions. We don't have such restrictions and we give them the freedom to leave because our democratic system is strong and hence our doors are wide open for anyone to leave. This freedom has been misused and we must not allow this to happen, and we need to rectify these issues, especially in terms of our academics. There will be more news on the other side of this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe insists that the country can no longer have an economic management system suited for a low-income country, highlighting that Sri Lanka is at risk of stagnating in an upper-middle income trap. Meanwhile, Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Indrajit Coomaraswamy, noted that if the country is to avoid such a situation, there will be a need for improvement in productivity and fiscal discipline. These views were expressed at the Sri Lanka Economic Summit held in Colombo today.
The Sri Lanka Economic Summit 2019 kicked off in Colombo today under the theme Recalibrating Sri Lanka's Economic Trajectory Towards 2025. The two-day event organised by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce brings together over 450 local and international participants consisting of prominent business leaders, policymakers and experts who play a key role in shaping national development in their respective countries.
Today, Sri Lanka has 6 FTAs, but we are still far behind our competitors. This is one important reason for our failure to diversify exports beyond tea and apparel. Our foreign policy must be based on openness and confident engagement. If there's one reform that will stabilize Sri Lanka's macroeconomy, it is central bank depolitization and independence. That is what will be done when I present the Monetary Law Act in Parliament next month, complemented by fiscal rules legislation designed to prevent Sri Lanka from living beyond its means. SOE management has become political rather than professional. That's Sri Lanka Airlines. I believe, personally of course, it is a vanity we could hardly afford. Keeping an airline flying for a misplaced sense of national pride. The state needs to cease to have operational control over state-owned enterprises operating in competitive markets. Our export sector has also been crippled by para-tariffs caused by businessmen influencing politicians.
We are now an upper middle income country. So we have two options. Do you like to stagnate in the middle income trap or have a leapfrog trajectory which will make us an advanced economy? If we are taking a leapfrog trajectory, then we have to go differently. So we've got to make a clean break. We cannot have an economic management system suited for a low income country. So we first start with continuing what we have done. We must have a fiscal policy that contains debt. We have to join the global value chain. We need a new outlook. So the government machinery has to be restructured. Whole thing has to be more private, modeled on the private sector. We have to rebuild trust, and that's the way to go forward.
Meanwhile, speaking at a sideline event at the summit today, Central Bank Governor Dr. Indrajit Coomaraswamy stressed that the country requires further growth in productivity if it is to get out of the upper middle income trap.
So if we are to graduate out of this middle income country trap, we need to get to 12,000 USD per capita income. If we are able to achieve an annual average growth of 8%, we will get there in 15 years. If we achieve the average growth rate that we've recorded in the post-conflict era, which is 5.6% per annum, then we can get there in about 20 years. I'd like to share with you 2 paradigm shifts which have qualitatively changed the policy-making landscape. One is the very fact that we have graduated to a high-income country status, which means we are now even more subject to the discipline of rating agencies and international capital markets. And this discipline, or the need for discipline, is amplified by the fact that in the foreseeable future, we are going to have to raise about $3 billion from international capital markets. That reduces our room to maneuver in terms of policy options, in terms of policy space. And that's something we have to accept. Unusually, we are beginning to age before we actually have had our economic transformation. So that is a challenge. Once the demographic pyramid begins to get inverted, it becomes much more difficult to drive growth through merely labor augmentation. When you have the pyramid in the normal way, more and more people come onto the labor market, and that helps you, provided you create enough jobs, that helps you to drive growth without having to pay too much attention to productivity, innovation, etc. Once you start aging, you have to drive growth much more through increases in productivity. Now, we've averaged 1% growth in productivity now for several decades. We simply can't go on like that. If we do, we will definitely never get out of the middle-income country trap.
Chief Executive Officer of State-owned National Development Bank Dimantha Seniviratne highlights the need for a reduction in interest rates in the backdrop of Sri Lanka's growth rate remaining at less than 3% and inflation rates currently hovering at around 4%. The NDB CEO was speaking at a Colombo Stock Exchange bell-ringing ceremony today.
Chairman of State-owned National Development Bank of Sri Lanka, Kavan Ratnayake, rang the ceremonial bell to commence trading at the Colombo Stock Exchange today to mark the bank's 40th anniversary. Colombo Stock Exchange CEO Rajiv Bandaranayake commended the bank's growth, leading to a market capitalization of over 22 billion rupees. Bandaranayake noted that NDB's involvement in the capital market had offered numerous investment opportunities. Addressing the ceremony, the NDB CEO Dimantha Seniviratne said that the decision to reduce interest rates by policymakers will be beneficial in the backdrop of Sri Lanka's current economic trend, and that new changes expected to the country's aging monetary policy are a positive step for the banking industry.
When you look at the growth rate of the country, which is less than 3%, and the inflation rate of around 4%, when you have interest rates around 14, 15, I don't think it would help the economy to grow, where the real growth of the economy is only 7%. So in that scenario, high interest rates won't help the economy to grow. So in that sense, what the policymakers are directing to bring the rates down, I think that is sensible. But whether we can hold that on for a long time, given the exchange parity as well, that is something we need to be mindful.
If the new monetary policy comes into effect, even the governor won't be a political appointee of the central bank and the monetary board members and such. In such a context, do you think that it will help more and will more beneficial for the banks in such a context?
Yeah, I think the Banking Act provide various improvements through, because Monetary Act not as maybe revised a couple of times, but it's quite old Monetary Act. So what is coming up is something I would say good for the country, because as whenever the political changes happen, I think the policy should remain same. So I think the changes that are happening are in the right direction.
Taking a look at the markets, equities snapped 2 consecutive sessions of gains to end lower today. The all-share price index ended 0.29% down at 5,811.07, while the Bourse was up 0.47% from last week. Meanwhile, foreign investors sold a net 8.6 million rupees worth of shares, extending the year-to-date net foreign outflow to 2.29 billion rupees worth of equities. Now here's a brief report on how the markets performed today, followed by a currency update.
A dull sentiment in the secondary bond market continued with ultra-thin volumes. In the stock market, the benchmark index moved to negative territory on price losses made in big caps Mercer Corp and John Keys Holdings. The SPI surged during the first 30 minutes of trading to reach 5,834 points, thereafter tumbled downwards. Today's low of 5,805 points, prior to closing at 5,811, losing around 17 points. Turnover recorded a 9-week high today, while 96% of the turnover was contributed by a parcel trade in overseas reality.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson held his first one-on-one EU negotiation talks after taking office. Let's see how that went. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's first foray into one-on-one Brexit negotiations with EU President Jean-Claude Juncker ended up with no progress in Luxembourg yesterday. The discussions centering on the Irish backstop, a protocol, a measure aimed at preventing a post-Brexit hard border, remained unresolved, with European Commission President Juncker recalling that it is the UK's responsibility to forward legally operational solutions compatible with the withdrawal agreement.
In a statement released after UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson met with EU President Jean-Claude Juncker, the Commission reiterated its willingness and openness to examine whether proposals meet the objectives of the backstop. Prime Minister Johnson later met with Prime Minister of Luxembourg Xavier Bettel but skipped a scheduled joint press conference afterwards. Speaking to media, Prime Minister Bettel stated that it is up to the British side and not the EU to come up with a solution to the differences because it is the UK that is proposing to exit from the EU.
An extension is only an option if it serves a purpose. We will not grant another extension just for the sake of granting another extension. But our people need to know what is going to happen to them in 6 weeks' time. They need clarity, they need certainty, and they need stability. You can't hold their future hostage for party political gains.
Israelis took to the polls today in the country's national election, in which Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces a battle for political survival that could end his 10-year domination of national politics. Opinion polls put former Armed Forces Chief Benny Gantz's centrist Blue and White party neck and neck with Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing Likud, suggesting that far-right Israeli Betinu party could emerge as kingmaker in coalition talks. The two main parties' campaigns in Israel's second parliamentary election in 5 months point to only narrow differences on many important issues: the regional struggle against Iran, ties with the Palestinians and the United States, and a stable economy. The election was called after Netanyahu failed to form a coalition following an April election in which Likud and Blue and White were tied, each taking 35 of 120 seats in the Knesset. Global cricketing icon Kumar Sangakkara had some inspiring words for Sri Lanka's future cricketers yesterday at the Schoolboy Cricketer Awards 2019, where he urged them to work hard, focus and let their skills decide their future in the sport. He also advised the youngsters to never rest on their laurels and not believe that playing for Sri Lanka is a right. Instead, he called it a privilege that is earned through hard work and sacrifice. In his address, the former Sri Lankan great also hit home that making strategic friends in their relevant cricketing spheres for the sole purpose of influence is unnecessary. Now, the 2019 Rugby World Cup kicks off this Friday with the opening Pool A match between host Japan and surprise inclusion Russia, who will be playing in only their second World Cup. The Russian team had a lucky qualifying break this time around, landing a place in Pool A after initial qualifier Romania, along with Belgium and Spain, were docked points for fielding ineligible players in their qualifying matches. The opening match will commence at 4:15 p.m. Sri Lankan time at the Tokyo Stadium in Chofu, Tokyo. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.